In the early 1980s, at the farthest tip of Long Island, locals began whispering about strange activity at an abandoned military base. The place was called Montauk Air Force Station, and it sat quietly behind locked fences and overgrown paths just beyond the beaches of Camp Hero State Park. But according to some, what went on beneath that rusting radar tower was anything but quiet. They spoke of underground laboratories and secret government experiments. They claimed runaway boys were taken off the streets and brought here, not for safety, but for something far more disturbing. Some said one of them had psychic abilities, and that the military was trying to amplify his mind to open gateways in time. Others described soldiers who would vanish into thin air, only to return changed. And then there were the more chilling tales, a creature that materialized from someone's thoughts. Portals to Mars, glimpses into other timelines, a project so unstable it had to be shut down and erased. No official record of such events exists. But to this day, some Montauk residents speak in hushed tones of the strange power that seemed to radiate from Camp Hero, as if something was left behind, and it's still watching. The legend of the Montauk Project isn't just a conspiracy theory. It's become a kind of modern myth, the kind that lives in shadows, in second-hand stories, and in the minds of those who wonder, what if it was all true? The Montauk Project story didn't come from a declassified document or a leaked government memo. It came from the memories of a man named Preston B. Nichols. In 1992, Nichols published a book titled The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, co-authored with Peter Moon. According to Nichols, he had recovered repressed memories of working on secret government experiments at Camp Hero in Montauk. These weren't ordinary military operations. They involved psychic warfare, time travel, and contact with alien entities. Nichols claimed the project was a continuation, or perhaps an expansion, of the infamous Philadelphia experiment, the alleged 1943 Navy experiment in which the USS Eldridge was rendered invisible and possibly teleported with disastrous results. He said that after that experiment, the government redirected its research to Montauk, seeking to refine their control over time and space. Among his most disturbing claims was the existence of the Montauk Boys, a group of homeless or runaway children allegedly abducted by the government for use in psychological and paranormal experiments. These children were supposedly subjected to trauma-based mind control, used to explore the limits of telepathy, precognition, and mental manipulation. According to Nichols, the U.S. government, or some black budget faction within it, was conducting experiments that pushed the limits of science and sanity. His book read like science fiction, yet was presented as fact. And though mainstream researchers dismissed it, a cult following began to form. Other alleged participants, like Al Bielek, soon came forward with stories of their own, feeding the fire and turning the Montauk Project from a fringe curiosity into a full-blown conspiracy legend. The Montauk Project isn't remembered for subtlety. It's a story where science fiction, military secrecy, and paranormal horror collide. At the heart of this legend are a series of bizarre claims that, if true, would rewrite everything we know about reality. These are the most infamous components of the alleged experiments at Camp Hero. Time tunnels. One of the boldest claims is that the scientists at Montauk succeeded in ripping a hole in time itself. Using advanced electromagnetic fields and psychic amplification, they allegedly created a stable time portal, one that could send people and objects through time and space. Some versions of the story claim this portal was used to travel back to 1943, linking it directly to the Philadelphia experiment. Others go further, stating that the portal reached as far as Mars or even alternate timelines. Perhaps the most chilling tale is what happened on August 12, 1983. On that day, according to Preston Nichols, a test subject's psychic powers spiraled out of control and manifested a physical creature from his own thoughts. Known as the Montauk Monster, this being rampaged through the base before the entire project was abruptly shut down. No photos exist, but the story remains one of the most dramatic moments in Montauk lore. Mind control chairs. Another key element is the so-called Montauk chair, a strange device supposedly built using extraterrestrial technology, or perhaps even gifted by aliens. The chair, connected to the subject's brain through sensors, was said to amplify psychic energy, allowing the user to project thoughts, images, and even open dimensional gateways using their mind alone. Nichols described one subject who became so powerful that he could materialize objects out of thought, shaping reality itself from a seated position. Others used the chair to view past or future events or to access parallel timelines. Whether mechanical or metaphysical, the chair became the control center for Montauk's most extreme experiments: contact with aliens. According to some versions of the story, non-human beings were not just involved in the experiments, they may have provided the very knowledge that made them possible. Nichols hinted that certain scientists at Montauk were working with extraterrestrials, possibly from another planet or dimension. These beings allegedly helped design the Montauk chair, offered insights into manipulating space-time, and might even have had their own reasons for meddling in human affairs. Parallel realities. Perhaps the most abstract claim is that the experiments didn't just open portals in space or time, they fractured reality itself. Test subjects reportedly encountered alternate versions of Earth, slipped into parallel timelines, or returned with memories that didn't align with our world's history. In some accounts, the fabric between realities became so thin that things started bleeding through: memories, events, and even people who didn't belong. These ideas have since become staples of science fiction. But in the Montauk story, they were presented as lived experience: wild, terrifying, and utterly destabilizing. By this point, the Montauk Project may sound like a sci-fi thriller, and that's exactly how many experts view it. Despite the elaborate claims of time travel, psychic warfare, and alien contact, no concrete evidence has ever been presented to support any of it. There are no photographs, no leaked documents, no credible eyewitness testimonies outside the core group of self-proclaimed participants. What does exist, however, is Camp Hero, the real-world military installation that anchors the story. Located in Montauk, New York, Camp Hero was originally a coastal defense station during World War II, later converted into an Air Force radar base during the Cold War. Its most iconic feature, the massive Sage radar tower, still looms over the site today, decommissioned but visible for miles. The base was officially closed in 1981 and transferred to the New York State Office of Parks. It is now part of Camp Hero State Park. This real history lends the Montauk story an air of plausibility. And it's worth noting that secret government programs did exist. Most famously, Project MKUltra, a CIA mind control initiative active from the 1950s to the 1970s. The discovery of MKUltra in declassified documents proved that agencies were indeed conducting unethical experiments on human subjects, including hypnosis, drug exposure, and psychological manipulation. So the idea of covert research isn't entirely fictional, but the specific claims of the Montauk Project, time machines, interdimensional monsters, alien alliances, come solely from books and personal testimonies, particularly those of Preston Nichols and Al Bielik. No official investigations, no whistleblower documents, and no physical trace of high-tech equipment have ever been found. Skeptics argue that the Montauk Project is a blend of urban legend, science fiction tropes, and Cold War paranoia. While it makes for an intriguing story, most historians and researchers place it firmly in the category of myth. Still, the lack of evidence hasn't stopped the theory from spreading or evolving. Even if most experts dismiss the Montauk Project as fiction, its influence on modern storytelling is undeniable, especially in the world of television, film, and speculative fiction. In fact, you've probably already encountered Montauk, even if you didn't realize it. When the creators of Stranger Things, Matt and Ross Duffer, were developing their now iconic series for Netflix, the show was originally titled Montauk. The original script was set in a fictionalized version of Long Island, directly inspired by the eerie reputation of Camp Hero and the bizarre claims tied to the Montauk legend. While the setting eventually changed to the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, the DNA of the Montauk Project remained intact. A secret government lab conducting psychic experiments on children? That's straight from Preston Nichols' accounts. A young girl with mental powers who escapes into the real world. That echoes the idea of the Montauk Boys. And, of course, interdimensional portals and creatures slipping through reality. Pure Montauk lore. Stranger Things didn't just borrow from Montauk, it popularized it. Following the success of the series, interest in the Montauk Project surged. Viewers went online to investigate the real story, and Camp Hero once again became a site of fascination for conspiracy theorists, paranormal enthusiasts, and curious tourists alike. Beyond Stranger Things, the Montauk mythos has found its way into graphic novels, podcasts, video games, and alternative history fiction, where shadowy labs, time loops, and government secrets are recurring themes. In this way, the Montauk Project has become more than a conspiracy theory. It has evolved into a kind of cultural folklore, one that bridges paranoia, nostalgia, and the eternal human urge to uncover hidden truths. The Montauk Project may lack hard evidence, but it certainly doesn't lack voices. Over the years, a handful of individuals have stepped forward claiming they weren't just observers of the story, they were part of it. At the center is Preston B. Nichols, whose book launched the entire narrative. In interviews, Nichols often described vivid, disturbing, recovered memories of working on deeply classified projects at Camp Hero. He claimed he had degrees in electrical engineering and psychology, and said that at one point he had been unknowingly recruited into the Montauk Project, only realizing it years later through mental regression and strange flashbacks. According to him, he eventually broke free of the program's control and chose to expose what he remembered. He wasn't alone. Another frequent name in Montauk lore is Al Bielek, who claimed not only to have participated in the Montauk experiments, but to have previously been involved in the Philadelphia experiment in 1943 as a crew member aboard the USS Eldridge. Bielek's story jumps across decades, involving time loops, teleportation, psychic warfare, and even fake moon landings staged by the US government. He insisted that the Montauk experiments were used to manipulate global events through psychic influence. Other self-described Montauk boys have surfaced over the years, each offering slightly different accounts. Some vague, some detailed, all unverified. Their stories typically include missing time, shared dreams, or flashes of underground labs and cold metal hallways. Some claim to have recognized people they'd never met before. Others speak of memories they wish they hadn't unlocked. To believers, these interviews are chilling confirmations. To skeptics, they're colorful tales born from books, reinforced by suggestion and encouraged by media attention. Regardless of your stance, these accounts have become part of the lore, oral history in a world where the line between imagination and memory is as thin as a wormhole. While the Montauk Project captivates many with its surreal detail and sci-fi flavor, it has also faced significant scrutiny, not only from scientists and historians, but also from journalists, local authorities, and former military personnel who served at the actual Camp Hero facility. To begin with, no credible documentation has ever surfaced to support any of the extraordinary claims. No paper trails, no photographs, no technical schematics, only self-published books, anecdotal interviews, and recycled conspiracy material. Investigations into Camp Hero's history have found no signs of underground labs, no experimental chairs, and no evidence of abducted children or time portals. The site's declassified military records show that it was a radar station, part of the Cold War's early warning system, decommissioned in 1981 and transferred to the state of New York. Even within the conspiracy theory community, many see Montauk as a patchwork of earlier myths: the Philadelphia experiment, MK-Ultra, alien contact theories. All of these are real-world fears or conspiracies, either partially true or widely believed, and the Montauk story fuses them into one cinematic package. To skeptics, this blending of tropes suggests not suppressed history, but imaginative fiction. Take Al Bielek's account, for instance. He claimed to have served aboard the USS Eldridge during its supposed teleportation in 1943, only to end up decades later working on Montauk's time travel chair. But Navy records show that no one named Al Bielek ever served aboard the Eldridge, and the ship's logs place it far from where the experiment was said to occur. Meanwhile, local historians and former workers at Camp Hero describe it as anything but extraordinary. Their memories include mundane military routines, routine radar operations, and a base slowly being phased out. No secret tunnels, no black site experiments, just rusted fences and Cold War dust. And yet, for every expert who debunks Montauk, there's a believer who sees that as further proof of a cover-up. In this way, the Montauk Project endures, not because of what can be proven, but because of what can't. The Montauk Project is, at its core, a story, but not just any story. It's a modern myth, woven from the raw material of Cold War paranoia, scientific wonder, and deep distrust in authority. It captures our fears of what governments might do behind closed doors, and our fantasies of bending time, altering minds, and touching other worlds. Why does it persist despite the lack of hard proof? Because it taps into something deeper than evidence: imagination. The idea that children were trained as psychic weapons, that time machines hid beneath a seaside radar tower, or that thoughts could become monsters. These are concepts born not just of conspiracy, but of desire. The desire to believe the world holds more than what we see. That there are forces, secrets, perhaps even truths, just out of reach. And let's be honest, it's fun. The Montauk Project has become cultural shorthand for everything strange, forbidden, and tantalizingly almost real. Whether you see it as a cautionary tale, a psychological projection, or a hidden truth buried in lies, it holds a unique place in the pantheon of modern legends. So, what do you believe? Is there a kernel of truth buried in the Montauk myths? Or is it simply a masterclass in fiction that took on a life of its own? One thing's for sure: if any of this is true, and they're still monitoring who pays attention, you might have just landed on their list. Sleep well.